Good evening, everyone. Before we begin with our school board meeting this evening, we are going to have Miss Ramaya Walker, a 7th grade student from Albert Cammon Middle School, who's going to lead us in the pledge. I want to share a little bit about Miss Walker before she begins. She is an honor roll student for all 4 quarters last year at Albert Cammon Middle, had perfect attendance all school year long. She's a member of the National Junior Beta Club. Ms. Walker is also a member of the Taylor Awards program and a member of the Bucket Beats School Band. And if you've never seen Cammon's Bucket Beats School Band, you've really missed out. They are fantastic. So if we could please stand while Ms. Walker blesses us with her thoughts this evening, and will remain standing for our Pledge of Allegiance.
Lord, thank you for this day and for bringing us all here safely. We pray for everyone to work together and for our meeting to be productive. Lord, we also ask that you bless our leaders with the wisdom and understanding to make wise decisions regarding the safety and success of everyone for this upcoming school year. Lord, we humbly ask you to end the COVID-19 pandemic, and we also ask you to help to keep all of my fellow pirates and their families, school board members, leaders, teachers, staff members, the Waters St. Charles Parish Public Schools community, my own family, and me safe as we navigate the uncharted territory before us. We thank you, Heavenly Father, for your goodness and ask that you receive all the glory, honor, and praise. In Jesus' name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ramaya, that was beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and prayers with us this evening. We greatly appreciate it. We wish you a wonderful year coming up this year in 7th grade. I call to order the St. Charles Parish School Board meeting to order for July 15th, 2020. First up on our agenda is 1.03, our roll call. We have 7 board members here with us this evening. Mr. Savoy is absent this evening, but we also have with us our superintendent, Dr. Ken Ortling, and our school board secretary, Ms. Shelley Babineau. Welcome, everyone. We're going to move on to our resolutions and proclamations. 2.01, resolution in memory of Mr. Melvin Dejean. And I would ask Mr. Robichaud if he'd please read that for us.
Yes, ma'am, it would be an honor.
Thank you.
I want to say something first, if it's okay with the president. NARCO lost a huge part of its heart when we lost Melvin Dejean. He helped raise me. He's a big part of who I am today, not just because of the paddle he used at Sacred Heart, because he probably should have used it more. But he was highly respected in the community. One piece of the resolution I'm going to read is how many years he was a teacher and served in St. Charles Parish, but he also served the school board for 8 years. He was elected in 1978 and was served to 1986. Mr. Smith remembers Mr. Melvin very well. And I just want to point that out, that he was also a public servant. Not just a community leader and an influence on many children. So, resolution in memory of Melvin Dejean. Whereas Mr. Melvin Dejean served as a teacher for 38 and a half years, 15 and a half years with the St. Charles Parish school system, and whereas Mr. Melvin Dejean also served on the St. Charles Parish School Board, be it resolved that the St. Charles Parish School Board herein expresses to the family of the late Melvin Dejean its sincere sympathy in this time of sorrow, and be it further resolved that a page in the July 15th, 2020 minute book be set aside for the sole purpose of inscribing thereon this resolution, and that a copy of the resolution be presented to Mr. Melvin Dejean's family. I so move.
I second.
I have a motion by Mr. Robichaud, a second by Mr. Nakam. Any discussion? Hearing none, please cast your vote. Item 2.01 passes unanimously. Please forgive me for not hugging. I wanted to. We just can't at this time. Item 2.02, resolution in memory of Mr. Roland Dufresne. I would ask Mr. Art Oakman if he would read that resolution for us, please.
I'd be honored, Madam President. Whereas Mr. Roland Dufresne served as a bus operator for 30 years in the St. Charles Parish Public School System, and be it resolved that the St. Charles Parish School Board herein expresses to the family of the late Roland Dufresne its sincere sympathy in this time of sorrow, and be it further resolved that a page in the July 15th, 2020 minute book be set aside for the sole purpose of inscribing thereon this resolution, and that a copy of this resolution be presented to Mr. Dufresne's family. I so move to approve this resolution.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Oakman, second by Mr. Robichaux. Any discussion? Hearing none, please cast your vote. Item 2.02 passes unanimously. Item 2.03, resolution in memory of deceased student. Mr. Alexander, would you read that resolution, please?
Yes, Madam President, I would.
Thank you.
This is a resolution in memory of a deceased student. Whereas the St. Charles Parish School Board herein expresses to the family of the late Eric Parson their sincere sympathy in this, their time of sorrow. And whereas Eric Parson was a student in the 11th grade at Destrehan High School, and be it further resolved that a page in the July 15, 2020 minute book be set aside for the sole purpose of inscribing thereon this resolution, and that a copy of this resolution be presented to the Parson family. This resolution is signed by the board president, Mr. Sonny Savoy, and the Superintendent of St. Charles Parish Public Schools, Dr. Ken Ortling, and I move that we adopt this resolution.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Alexander and a second by Mr. Suffren. Any discussion? Hearing none, please cast your vote.
I don't have it.
It's not coming up. Thumbs up? Okay. Item 2.03 passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to our business items this evening. Item 3.01, minutes of the June 22nd committee meetings, June 24th, 2020 regular board meeting, and June 29th, 2020 board retreat.
Move approval.
I'll second.
Have a motion by Mr. Robichaux and a second by Mr. Nakane. Any discussion? Hearing none, please cast your vote. Item 3.01 passes unanimously. Item 3.02, Superintendent's Evaluation. The performance of the superintendent has been exemplary and has included leading the school system during a pandemic and resulting school closures.
Madam President, I move that we amend the superintendent's contract to include an annual pay adjustment and a one-year contract extension. Second. Pay adjustment in the amount of $9,250.
Have a motion by Ms. Sanaki and a second by Mr. Suffren. Any discussion? Hearing none, please cast your vote. Item 3.02 passes unanimously. Item 3.03, purchase of excess workers' compensation insurance. The district's coverage for excess workers' compensation insurance with NY Magic expires July 31st, 2020. The current plan is a self-insured retention of $500,000 per claim. The Director of Risk Management and Benefits, John Kane, has received 2 proposals for excess workers' compensation insurance. This agenda item was reviewed at the Risk Management and Insurance Committee meeting of the Board on Monday, July 13th, 2020, and is aligned with Goal C of the Board's Strategic Action Plan.
Madam Vice President, I move to approve the purchase of excess workers' comp insurance from Midwest Employers Casualty for a cost of $118,721 with a self-insured retention of $750,000.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Robichaux and a second by Mr. Nakane. Any discussion? Hearing none, please cast your vote. Item 3.03 passes unanimously. Item 3.04, purchase of faithful performance bonds. The purchase of faithful performance bonds is a good business practice and protects the school board's assets. The school board purchases various bonds covering the school board and all employees. These are issued as 3 separate bonds, which will expire July 31st, 2020. The Director of Risk Management and Benefits, John Kane, has received quotes from CNA Western Surety for expiring bonds currently in place and from Travelers for the Employee Dishonesty Bond from LA Insurance Service. The Risk Management and Insurance Committee is recommending purchase of the faithful performance bonds for the superintendent and the tax collector with CNA Western Surety and moving the Employee Dishonesty Bond to Travelers. This agenda item was reviewed at the Risk Management and Insurance Committee meeting of the Board on Monday, July 13th, 2020, and is aligned with Goal C of the Board's Strategic Action Plan.
Move approval of the purchase of faithful performance bonds at a cost of $9,908. I'll second.
Have a motion by Mr. Robichaux and a second by Mr. Oquin. Any discussion? Hearing none, please cast your vote. Item 3.04 passes unanimously. Item 3.05, purchase of student accident and catastrophic insurance. The school board has purchased student accident insurance for all students and athletic participants for the past 10 years. Cost of the program is driven by claims experience. The Director of Risk Management and Benefits has received renewal rates from Risk Services of Louisiana Incorporated. The renewal of the current plan comes with an 18.4% decrease in the premium from the prior year. This agenda item was reviewed at the Risk Management and Insurance Committee meeting of the board on July 13, 2020, and is aligned with Goal C of the board's strategic action plan.
Madam Vice President, I move approval of the purchase of student accident and catastrophic insurance with Emeritus Life Insurance Corporation and Great American Insurance Company from Risk Services of Louisiana, Inc. at a cost of $107,423.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Robichaux and a second by Mr. Oquin. Any discussion? Hearing none, please cast your vote. It's not coming up. We have to do our thumbs up. Is that good? Item 3.05 passes unanimously. Oh, it just came up. Okay. Item 3.06, personnel items. This agenda item was reviewed at the Personnel and Policy Committee meeting of the board on Monday, July 13, 2020, and is aligned with Goal B of the board's strategic action plan.
Move approval of the personnel items as presented to the board.
Motion by Mr. Smith,
I'll second.
second by Mr. Knockham. Any discussion? Hearing none, please cast your vote. Item 3.06 passes unanimously. Item 3.07, job description revisions. The superintendent is responsible for recommending job description revisions to the board. Several revisions are being recommended for the 2020-2021 school year. This agenda item was reviewed at the Personnel and Policy Committee meeting of the board on Monday, July 13, 2020, and is aligned with Goal B of the board's strategic action plan.
Move approval.
I believe I have a motion by Mr. Naka and a second by Mr. Oquin. Any discussion? Hearing none, please cast your vote. Item 3.07 passes unanimously. Item 3.08, resolution to waive the second reading of Board Policy 1.36, Public Health Emergency for Students, and 4.70, Public Health Emergency for Employees. The Louisiana Department of Education recently issued school reopening guidelines and resources to be considered by school boards as they prepare to reopen schools and reintroduce students, teachers, and staff to the actual physical school environment. In order to be in compliance with these guidelines prior to the start of the 2020-2021 school year, it is necessary to adopt Board Policy 1.36, Public Health Emergency for Students, and Board Policy 4.70, Public Health Emergency for Employees. In an emergency, the board may, by resolution and majority vote, waive the second reading of the proposed policy statement to adopt the policy by taking immediate action. Adopting Board Policy 1.36, Public Health Emergency for Students, and Board Policy 4.70, Public Health Emergency for Employees, grants the authority to the superintendent to create and maintain the necessary administrative regulations and procedures during a health emergency. And I would ask Mr. Naka if he'd please read the resolution.
I'd be happy to, Madam President.
Thank you.
Resolution waiving second reading of policy. Whereas the school board and superintendent are responsible for adopting policy and procedures concerning the introduction of students and staff in the school setting that prioritizes their safety and health. And whereas the St. Charles Parish School Board Policy 2.29 states that in an emergency, the board may, by resolution and majority vote, waive the second reading of the proposed policy statement and adopt the policy by taking immediate action. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the St. Charles Parish School Board waives the second reading of Board Policy 1.36 and 4.70, and I move approval.
I have a motion by Mr. Naka and a second by Mr. Robichaud. Any discussion? Hearing none, please cast your vote. Item 3.08 passes unanimously. Item 3.09, Policy 1.36, Public Health Emergency for Students, and Policy 4.70, Public Health Emergency for Employees. The Louisiana Department of Education recently issued school reopening guidelines and resources to be considered by school boards as they prepare to reopen schools and introduce students, teachers, and staff to the actual physical school environment. As pointed out by the LDOE guidance, it is the responsibility of each local school board, superintendent, and other school leadership to make decisions based on the unique needs of their community as to what specific regulations and procedures are needed to accommodate the introduction of students and staff in the school setting that prioritizes their safety and health while providing the educational resources that students need to advance. This agenda item was reviewed at the Policy, Personnel, and Policy Committee meeting of the Board on Monday, July 13, 2020, and is aligned with Goal B of the Board's Strategic Action Plan.
Move approval.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Robichaud and a second by Mr. Smith. Any discussion? Hearing none, please cast your vote. Item 3.09 passes unanimously. Item 3.10, 2020-2021 Student Code of Conduct District Handbook. As mandated by Louisiana Revised Statute 17:416.8, an annual review of the St. Charles Parish Public Schools Student Code of Conduct District Handbook was conducted by the Discipline Committee on May 28, 2020. Recommendations for revisions to the handbook were made by the committee in compliance with board policies regarding student discipline. This agenda item was reviewed at the Curriculum Instruction and Assessment Committee meeting of the board on Monday, July 13, 2020, and is aligned with Goal D of the board's strategic plan.
I move that we accept the revisions to the St. Charles Parish Public Schools 2020-2021 Student Code of Conduct District Handbook.
Have a motion by Mr. Suffren,
Second.
a second by Mr. Nakhan. Any discussion?
Madam Vice President, I'd like to invite Ms. Jerry Smith, Executive Director of Student Services, up to make a few comments regarding the
Thank you.
code of conduct.
Sure.
Thank you.
Good evening, board members and Superintendent Ortland, and thank you. As it has been stated, the Discipline Committee did meet on May 28th, and a few changes were recommended to the Student Code of Conduct for 2021. All of the changes align with state legislation and Department of Education mandates. The first change that parents can notice in the handbook relates to attendance. And so now that both of our high schools will be operating on the same schedule, the language in the Code of Conduct has been updated to reflect that change. We also added a pandemic attendance statement that basically lets students and parents know that whatever the Department of Education sends down to us as virtual attendance requirements, we will require students to comply with those. We've also added a dress code pandemic statement as it relates to the requirement of facial coverings for students. We've made a big adjustment to the violence prevention program. Parents can find those changes detailed in this issue of the Code of Conduct. I think it's important to let parents know that this is an initiative that aligns with restorative practices, and it also is a joint venture between the 29th Judicial System, the St. Charles Parish Sheriff's Office, the District Attorney's Office, as well as the school district. For students who commit the infraction of fighting at the high school, we will also be implementing a pilot to further support those students. The details of those changes can also be found in the student offense discipline chart. Finally, it is a requirement by legislation passed last school year that the National Suicide Prevention number be on the back of students' IDs, and we have also proactively included that number in the Student Code of Conduct. That concludes the changes to the 2021 Student Code of Conduct District Handbook.
Yes, sir.
Mrs. Smith, who are the members of the discipline committee?
So the discipline committee this year, we had a total of 38 participants via Zoom, and they included board members, administrators, parents, students, assistant principals, transportation, special education, pupil appraisal, child welfare and attendance, a variety of disciplines that support the work of the school district. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Any other questions or discussion? Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, when it comes to this policy for fighting and the consequences of fighting,
Yes.
I find it very troubling due to the high suspension rates of African American students, and also with the disproportionate rate when it comes to these suspensions, when it comes to the demographic of our parish. Cannot support this policy.
I understand your concerns, Mr. Alexander, and I sincerely hope that the changes that we studied with Ms. Smith in renovating and rewriting the handbook is going to make a big difference in the way that we are able to get our students to resolve their resolutions without fighting.
Thank you, Madam Chair, but I find the consequences of this policy is going to increase the number of African American students who are suspended rather than lowered.
Okay, well,
If you look
I
at-
hope that doesn't happen.
If you look at the consequences for a person who instigated a fight in middle school grades, it calls for a conference with parents and staff to suspension. In high school, it calls for a conference with parents and staff and up to suspension. Now, that's for the person who instigates a fight. Look what it says for the person who participates in the fight. First fight, 3-day suspension. The sentence is lighter on the person who instigates the fight than the person who is participating, who's defending himself.
My understanding, though, truthfully, is the fact that if it is a first fight, and if the student agrees, is not the instigator, and agrees to break it up when administration attempts to break the two up, they are not suspended. It's only if the two persist in, am I correct, Dr. Ortland, that they persist in the fighting, that they both get suspended?
If they participate in the fight, I'll ask Ms. Smith to come back to the table, but I can say,
Thank you. We have taken many proactive steps the past few years to try to minimize suspensions of our students and decrease the disproportionality of our populations of students, including restorative practices at our middle and high schools, working with our judicial system for our violence prevention program that we changed, where we changed arrests to a more restorative approach with our students, in addition to looking at all of the code of conduct language and responses for specific behaviors in schools to make a restorative approach. That can certainly be a concern. I understand your concern, Mr. Alexander. At the same time, we've tried to take more proactive approaches when it comes to discipline our students, including working with professional organizations such as CARES and the judicial system to truly provide wraparound services to our students, in addition to implementing further social work in the schools, middle school and high schools, as well as our many counselor supports programs and mental health programs as well. And I'll let Ms. Smith talk to some of the other initiatives that we've done to try to reduce some of those things.
So one of the most significant changes was about 2 years ago, we realized that, in addition to students being suspended for a first fight, you're correct, but that actually comes down from the State Department. A fight between two students is a suspendable offense. But in addition to that suspension, the students were also being arrested. And so what we did is we came back together because the program had not been revisited for over 20 years. We all came back together, the 29th Judicial, the Sheriff's Office, the District Attorney's Office, us with the school system, and we looked at how can we hold students accountable for fighting, because we don't want violence on the school campus, but not have them with an arrest record. So if the students comply, kind of similar to the scenario that Mrs. Bernard shared, the students are issued a summons. They're not handcuffed anymore, and they do not have an arrest record. If they persist and it becomes more of a disturbs the peace, the sheriff's office, not the school system, makes the decision about whether further severe consequences or restraints are required. But issuing the summons instead of the arrest was really a big response on our part to be responsive to students. And then we're also working very hard to get the restorative practices approaches where students can sit in a circle and work through the conflict that they've had with another student.
Mrs. Smith, I appreciate your words, but I believe we should spend more time, more effort on preventing fights in the first place. We are treating the disease of fighting after somebody contracted the disease. If we would spend more time sitting down with our kids and just find out where they stand in life. What are their concerns? Why do they fight? We'd be much better off than getting the sheriff. The last person, a child, especially African American, wants to see is a police officer.
Well, one of the things the leadership of this board did approve this year was a social emotional wellness plan. That plan provided more staff at our schools, specifically our high schools and middle schools, to teach our students social skills, just like you referenced, so that they can understand each other as well as we can understand what their needs are. This year, going into this year, we'll actually be surveying our students to see where they're coming in at. So we are taking active approaches to try to minimize that. We realize it is a problem. We recognize that, which is why we continue to make efforts to try to reduce this.
Norman, I appreciate your effort, and I hope it pays off because I'm hopeful that there are no fights in any of our schools.
Yes, sir.
Because it's a high cost you pay, and it's an unfair cost that the kids have to pay for fight that could probably be prevented.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
I have one question.
Yes, sir. Mr. Smith?
Ms. Smith, the policy that was in place that you alluded to was if there was a fight in our schools, the action that was required was that there be an arrest. Is that correct?
The old program that we
And-
were operating from, yes.
Okay. That policy was overturned
2 years.
last year, correct?
It was about 2 school years ago, yes.
Yeah, so for this year, we will not be arresting youngsters who get involved in fights.
For a simple fight, no.
We are tracking the data so that we will be able to make some determination as to whether or not relaxing the decision to involve the criminal justice system or not will result in fewer fights
Yes, we are tracking the data, and we're also implementing the proactive programs to wrap around students to hopefully be more preventative, so there won't even need to be a summons or an arrest.
Let me ask that by the end of the first semester of this coming school year, that you would provide us with the comparative data showing the number of offenses that occurred in our schools prior to, that is, when students were being arrested for fighting, and the data after, so that we can make some judgments about whether or not the relaxing that policy and the implementation of programs and practices in the school directed to curbing that behavior, whether it has promise of being effective. So at that time, we can make some decisions about any further recommendations regarding policy or policy changes that might need to be made to bring the policy more in line with what we want the school district to reflect.
Yeah, so this will be a unique year when we go back, but definitely we will make data collection and analysis a priority.
Correct, and I think that statement will be a good statement that should appear in the beginning of the report that you will file. That statement should indicate that there was some changes in the total environment of the school due to whatever. So you'd make that statement as a pre, and then give us the data and compare to the previous year. So we can see whether or not the programs that are in place are being effective, and also whether or not the policy is a policy that's appropriate for what we're trying to accomplish in terms of trying to make sure that our schools are safe and that children who attend our schools are safe, because we've got a difficult situation to deal with. We're trying to maintain a safe environment, and of course fighting can lead to all kinds of things. Fighting can lead to bringing weapons to school, all kinds of things. So let's just see where we are with what we have done to try to make some changes, and come back at the end of the first semester with a report, okay?
Will do. Thank you.
Absolutely, Mr. Knockett.
One of the tools that we've recently implemented and we continue to see it grow is the Care Center Foundation. We had a report last year that the Care Center Foundation dealt with 245 families, dealing with truancy and fighting and things like that. They anticipate that number in a normal school year, this year, if it's somewhat normal, is going to grow to over 450. And then the cooperative endeavor agreement we have with them and the services that they continue to offer to our students, I think it's going to show dividends. It's just, they're just getting off the ground. It's going to take some time. They're working with the school system, with the court system, with the police department, trying to look at a holistic approach and deal with the student and the family, to find the root cause of some of the issues that we have in the school district. So, I look forward to seeing what they're going to do. John, like I said, I think it's just another tool in our toolbox. And I look forward to, seeing the day that Mr. Smith has requested. See how that turns out. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Any further discussion?
Just one point, and it's not a question, it's just that, if we get a report early enough, that is at the end of the first quarter or the second
That'd be
quarter,
October.
it gives us time to look at the data and see whether or not the treatment is working. And if it is not, we know that we need to make some additional adjustment. Maybe we need to look at additional programs and practices that might need to be put in place to make sure that we hit our target. The other thing that we need to do, what's our goal as it relates to discipline measures? I think that when we look at the data that we have with regard to fight, what's the goal? What would we be not say satisfied with, but what would we be happy if we could reduce the current data by 50%, by 75%? What's acceptable? What could we say? Okay, if we reduce the number of fights in the schools, given the fact that we have now implemented new and aggressive programs to deal with it, then what are we looking for? Are we looking for a 50% reduction, a 75%, or 100%?
I think ultimately 100, don't you?
But then we ought to write that goal somewhere. We ought to establish a goal. We don't have one.
You're right. You are correct.
And what I'm saying to Ms. Smith and her group is to let's come up with some goals and objectives that we're trying to accomplish as it relates to managing student discipline. The total piece of managing student discipline, not just fights, okay? Because I think the programs that we've got in place is really targeting not only fights, but it's targeting managing student discipline altogether, okay?
Well, we can look certainly at the end of the first quarter, but I do think we get more significant data by the end of the semester, because usually things start off fairly calmly as far as fighting goes. I think that it picks up toward mid-year and into the third semester, but we certainly can look at it.
Right, but the only problem with that, Melinda, and go back to your days as a principal, the reason you get reports quarterly or periodically, because if you, let's say if you had 100 fights in the school during the school year, and you get a report that shows that you had 75 fights by the end of the first quarter, you're not going to hit the target.
Correct.
So you want to look at those reports, those interim reports, you are able to predict whether or not you are going to have any level of success. And that's why, I'm asking for more frequent reporting. I don't want to wait until the end of the year and then we say, okay, this is what we had. That's not what we do now.
Right. I was just thinking the semester would probably give us more informational data, but we certainly can do it at the quarter. Okay, any further discussion? Thank everybody for their input. Could we please cast our vote now? Item 3.10 passes, 6 voting in affirmative and 1 opposing. Item 3.11, RFP acceptance disinfecting program services. Proposals were received from 8 vendors for disinfecting program services on Tuesday, June 23, 2020. The proposals were reviewed and evaluated based on the following criteria: qualifications, methodology, required information, costs, and prior experiences or references. This service agreement is for a 1-year period beginning July 15, 2020 and ending July 14, 2021, with 2 optional years at the discretion of the St. Charles Parish Public Schools. Disinfects Incorporated met all the criteria in the proposal, and this agenda item was reviewed at the Capital Improvements Committee meeting of the board on Monday, July 13, 2020, and is aligned with Goal D of the board's strategic action plan.
Madam President, I move that we accept the proposal from Disinfect Incorporated for disinfecting program services at a cost of $106,500.
Motion by Mr. Nakam.
Second.
Second by Mr. Suffren. Thank you. Any discussion? Please cast your vote. Sir?
I just wanted to mention that with regard to this disinfecting program, the school district is required to meet all of the CDC guidelines when it opens. And just for the public information, disinfecting and sanitizing the school, not just one time, but ongoing.
Repeatedly.
Disinfecting and sanitizing the school is an attempt on the part of the school district to comply with all of the CDC guidelines and make sure that our children are in a safe and healthy environment. And that is not to say that we can guarantee that, but the company that is going to do the disinfecting, they have a success rate that we believe we can kind of feel very secure with.
Correct. Thank you. Please cast your vote. Item 3.11 passes unanimously. Item 3.12, Cooperative Endeavor Agreement Renewal. The St. Charles Community Care Center Foundation Incorporated with the St. Charles Parish School Board. The St. Charles Community Care Center Foundation Incorporated was given permission to use Building B at E.J. Landry Alternative Center through a cooperative endeavor agreement. The foundation is seeking renewal of this agreement with the St. Charles Parish School Board. The revised agreement will reflect an 11-month agreement. The Care Center Foundation supports the school system's goal of coordinated services to reduce the barriers to student success. The agenda item was reviewed at the Capital Improvements Committee meeting of the board on Monday, July 13, 2020, and is aligned with Goal D of the board's strategic action plan.
Madam President, I move that we approve the renewal of the cooperative endeavor agreement by the St. Charles Community Care Center Foundation Incorporated with the St. Charles Parish School Board. There is no cost for this renewal.
Motion by Mr. Nakam, second by Mr. Oakman. Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, please cast your vote. Item 3.12 passes unanimously. Item 3.13, declaration of surplus buses and vehicles. Due to age, mileage, and condition, 5 buses and 4 vehicles have been identified to be considered as surplus by the board. The board should declare the buses and vehicles as surplus to allow them to be destroyed to meet legal requirements and requirements for the Volkswagen settlement grant. This agenda item was reviewed at the Finance and Audit Committee meeting of the board on Monday, July 13, 2020, and is aligned with Goal C of the board's strategic action plan.
I move that we declare the buses and vehicles as surplus and authorize disposal to meet legal requirements and the requirements for the Volkswagen settlement grant.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Suffren, second by Mr. Robichaux. Any discussion?
I have a question I want to ask.
Yes, sir.
With the spacing requirements that we're going to be confronted with in terms of transporting our youngsters this year, if we are able to get school open, will there be any additional buses needed? For example, if we're going to, we've got a 60-passenger bus that may only be able to carry 30 kids. Will we need additional buses? And if so, will we need to purchase additional buses, or do we need to go with a lease on additional buses for a short term with an option to do that lease, depending on how long this situation is going to be that we're going to be dealing with?
I believe Ms. Teresa Brown will address your concerns.
Thank you, Ms. Bernard. So the question, to make sure I understood the question, is regarding surplus buses and if we're going to surplus buses with our current situation that we're about to enter into with our new school year, making sure we don't have a shortage. Is that the concern that I heard? Okay.
Well, my concern is, we understand that these buses have reached their life
Usefulness.
expectancy, so we've got to get rid of them. But
Yes, sir.
the question that I'm asking, since we're on buses, is we open school and have to open school according to the CDC guidelines. It will mean that we probably will have to have additional buses.
So,
Because the spacing on those buses will not allow kids to be 3 to a seat and that sort of thing. Will we need new buses? If so, how do we plan to get those buses, to purchase, lease, or have we had discussion on that? And what is the status?
okay, thank you so much for your question. So we feel like the current fleet that we have can meet our needs based on the numbers that we're looking at from the survey that we put out. We had we had approximately 800 students that will not have declined transportation service through our survey. And then we also have when we look at the numbers from e-learning, based on all that information, we do feel like we can meet the needs of the district as far as transportation, even with social distancing. So at this point, we feel like we have enough drivers and we have enough buses, even surplusing these 5 that we're bringing to you tonight. We feel very comfortable with our decision to surplus these and move forward, that we can meet our needs. Does that answer your question? We have discussed it at great length to make sure that we have enough staff and buses in order to tackle our new adventure in the next few weeks.
Madam Vice President, if I may.
Absolutely,
So
Dr. Orr.
we've been planning with our strong force the past 2.5 months. We've been planning, and transportation was one of the first things that we had to make sure was grounded before we could move forward, because certainly transporting students for in-class daily instruction is one of our primary priorities, other than the safe and health of our students. So we certainly work through those initial challenges. We feel we can adequately accommodate transporting our students to and from school each day in the phases.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate that.
Anything else?
Questions? Yes, Mr. Rozier?
So, public knowledge, I know they public knowledge, whether they fund these vehicles, be able to bid on buying.
Where do they, our public surplus auction, when we go to surplus them, actually, we are hoping that we're going to surplus them in the same method we've surplus the past 2 times and get reimbursed for 25% through the VW grant. So these buses will not be sold. Correct, not this round. We anticipate being able to seek funding. The vehicles will be surplus, but in that way that you're speaking of, through public surplus, public auction. Online with the public surplus, what's the specific name of that? .com, publicsurplus.com. But yes, the maintenance vehicles, we will be surplusing those. The buses, we're hoping to go ahead and replace those and receive funding for those buses. You're welcome.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, please cast your vote. Item 3.13 passes unanimously. Item 3.14, resolution to approve the millage rates for the tax year 2020. Louisiana Revised Statute 47:1705A requires an agency with taxing authority to furnish the assessor and legislative auditor with the tax rate to be applied to the assessed property values each year. The St. Charles Parish School Board, as a taxing body, must take official action to approve the levy of property taxes. Favorable board action on the attached resolution is necessary for the millages to be levied and taxes collected. This agenda item was reviewed at the Finance and Audit Committee meeting of the board on Monday, July 13th, 2020, and is aligned with Goal C of the board's strategic action plan.
I move that we adopt a resolution to approve the millage rates for the tax year 2020. The millage rates would be 4.04 for the school constitutional tax, 42.36 for school operations and maintenance tax, 4.35 for school construction and improvement, and 5.01 for school bonds, for a total of 55.76.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Suffren and a second by Mr. Robichaux. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, please cast your vote.
The only thing I want to mention, Madam Vice President, is that this keeps our millage rates at the same level they've been for the last several years.
Thank you. Item 3.14 passes unanimously. And item 3.15, accounts payable for the month of June. Invoices and other financial obligations of the school district are customarily paid weekly. Request for approval of these transactions is normally made to the board monthly. The board must approve expenditures of public funds under its jurisdiction. This agenda item was reviewed at the Finance and Audit Committee meeting of the board on Monday, June 22nd, 2020, and is aligned with Goal C of the board's strategic action plan.
I move that we approve the accounts payable for the month of May 2020 in the total amount of $3,089,280.
I have a motion by Mr. Suffren and a second by Mr. Smith. Any discussion? Hearing none, please cast your vote. Item 3.15 passes unanimously. We'll move on to our closing items this evening. 4.01, standing committee reports. Would any chairpersons of any committee like to report at this time?
Madam Chair, the Capital Improvements Committee met on Monday, the 13th, reviewed two items. Both those items came to the table tonight. First item was the RFP acceptance for disinfecting program services. Second item was a cooperative endeavor agreement renewal with the St. Charles Parish Community Care Center Foundation Incorporated, in agreement with the St. Charles Parish School Board. And again, both those items were approved at the table tonight. And that concludes my report.
Thank you.
Madam President, the Personnel Committee met last Monday and reviewed the items that were presented tonight for approval, and we'd like to thank the board for considering these items and for the passage of those items.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Upshur.
Vice President, the Insurance Committee also met. I want to thank our risk manager, John Payne, for doing a good job scrubbing these policies, really looking over them. We approved tonight the workers' comp renewal. We had competition from two companies that brought us different options with different premiums. As a board, we had to decide what the best option was for the right money, best bang for our buck. We did. We did a good job. We also approved the student accident insurance, which we had two companies come to the table, very close in coverages, but due to the COVID-19 credits we received from last year, and hopefully received some on the policy we're going to remove this year, we stayed with the company we were with. We also approved the favorable performance bonds tonight that were discussed. We had two companies come to the table. Our new company, plus Travelers, came to the table and we moved one of the two
travel. So I think the insurance committee did a good job reviewing all these policies and getting the best options for the district.
Thank you.
The Finance and Audit Committee met on Monday, July 13th, and we covered 4 items. 3 of those items came to the full board during this meeting and were approved. Those 3 items were the declaration of surplus buses and vehicles, the resolution to approve the millage rates for the tax year 2020, and the accounts payable for the month of May 2020. The 4th item was Chief Financial Officer Donna Post presented information relative to offering a raw version of the 403B option for employees, and the committee agreed to add that as an option for our employees starting this year. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. The Curriculum Instruction and Assessment Committee met on Monday, July 13th. We discussed the 2020-2021 Student Code of Conduct District Handbook, which was approved earlier this evening. Any other committee reports? Thank you so much. Item 4.02, the Superintendent's Report. Dr. Ortley.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. We are quickly approaching the start of the 2020-2021 school year. Throughout the summer, teachers and administrators participated in professional development to prepare for our core business of teaching and learning, in whatever phase we may be in. I'd like to thank school board members, teachers, administration, custodians, maintenance, bus drivers, parents, bus operators, parents, secretaries, child nutrition, nurses, central office staff, and all who have assisted in preparing to reopen our schools. Because of your hard work, commitment, and focus, the St. Charles Parish Public School System is excited for the 2020-2021 school year to begin. We understand that communication is critical in the school system's ability to engage parents and families. There are several things that the Public Information Department has prepared to help students, parents, and families get ready for the upcoming school year. A Strong Start School Reopening Guide will be soon sent to families via email and linked to the district website. This guide will contain comprehensive information relative to our return to schools, including health and safety measures, instruction, child nutrition, transportation, and how classes will be facilitated relative to different phases. A back-to-school brochure is being mailed to all St. Charles Parish residents prior to school reopening. Please check your mailbox in the coming weeks for the brochure. Students will once again receive an inbox at the beginning of the school year. The inbox contains important district and school documents for the year. I'd like to thank Shell Norco Manufacturing Complex for its continued support of funding for the inbox. Please be sure to review the information in the inbox and complete any back-to-school paperwork before the deadline. The annual youth rally for St. Charles Parish students and parents will take place on Saturday, August 1st, 2020 from 9 a.m. until noon in the Dr. Rodney R. LaFond Performing Arts Center parking lot. The rally is sponsored by St. Charles Parish Sheriff's Office, Alpha Daughters of Zion, Blessed to be a Blessing, United Way of St. Charles, and St. Charles Parish Public Schools. This year's event will be a drive-through school supply giveaway to the first 700 St. Charles Parish residents. Social distancing mandates will be in effect. This is a great kickoff to the school year. Hope to see you there. Due to uncertainties for fall of 2020, we have decided to cancel the Community Ed Fall 2020 semester. This is being done out of an abundance of caution to keep our community members safe and to eliminate unexpected cancellations, like we had to do for the spring of 2020. The Community Ed team will focus efforts on planning for the spring of 2021. A survey will be sent to Community Ed instructors and participants soon to gather important feedback to plan for the spring 2021 semester. We appreciate your interest in our program and apologize for any inconvenience that may have caused by canceling the semester. Thank you for your understanding and continued support. If you have questions or concerns regarding Community Ed, please call 985-785-7268. We know there are many questions surrounding the new e-learning program. We recognize that more detailed information is needed for parents in order to make an informed decision. Flexibility in registering for the e-learning program beyond July 15th deadline will be allowed to give families time to review more detailed plans which may alter their decision. However, once the e-learning program and guide has been released, There will be a cutoff date for registration that must be adhered to for staffing and support purposes. Thank you, Madam Vice President. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Ortman.
Motion adjourned.
Motion by Mr. Robichaud, second by Mr. Nakhan. We are adjourned.